Where'd you grow up?
I grew up here in Shreveport. We were extremely poor. At 5, my mom and dad divorced, so I lived in what you'd call Section 8 housing, government-assisted housing. My mom remarried when I was 8, and at that time we had to move up. We moved up to Cedar Grove. I lived on West 75th. Went to Woodlawn High School. There were times where we moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and back. But yeah, I'm local.
Okay. So were you always interested in computers and technology, or did something get you interested in that?
I was not. Growing up, I liked to go play basketball outside and played a lot of sports. Never really had an interest in technology other than playing video games. Back then it was Atari. And even when I did my bachelor's here at LSUS, I can remember my wife was typing all my reports for me because I didn't know how to do it. And in fact, I went back and did a master's in systems technology, and I remember sitting in a class and the professor said, "I want you to copy files from the network drive down to your floppy," and I had no idea what he was talking about. And so yeah, I didn't have a strong interest in technology at all.
Right.
It wasn't until I had a friend that worked in the biochemistry lab with me, Dong Bing Wei. That year he went to med school and he took a Java class here, and he said, if at the end of this year I'm going to go to California, and if I get a job, I'm not coming back. He got a job and he was making good money, and I was like, that's what I need to do.
Right.
So I went back, did a master's in systems technology.
So you work at Synapse now.
Work at Synapse.
And I know you're Chief Information Officer there, right?
Yes.
So before you worked at Synapse, what did you do? What kind of jobs did you have?
Well, when I first got into computer science and started doing that master's in systems technology, I knew that experience was extremely important, so I tried to get any job that I could. And the first few programming jobs that I got, I worked for insurance companies. And, I was the only technical person, or there might have been one or two other technical people. So for somebody just getting started, I strongly recommend going in a different direction. I was very happy when I finally worked somewhere where there were multiple programmers or technology people, so I could ask questions. Back then we didn't have answers on Google for everything, and so it was challenging to find help when you're by yourself. So back then we did a lot of simple access database stuff, report writing, small office automation applications, and I remember an individual asked me if I'd like to help them build a product, and I was so thrilled. That's always what I wanted to do, is build something for somebody. I didn't necessarily want to do these small office automation projects, and just that opportunity was phenomenal. And I actually ended up working with that company for 12 years. I wasn't a very good programmer. I was more brute force and trial and error until I got it. But I worked hard, and over time, I got more and more responsibility. I was really good at delivering on other people's dreams, but I grew more and more wanting to do my own thing and do it my own way, and so that's what led me to where I am now.
So being CIO at Synapse, I know CIO is kind of a new position that's come around in the last 20 years or so in companies. What do you do day to day as a CIO?
That's really tough to nail down. CIOs are different for just about every company. Traditionally, it was managing backups and equipment and everything else, and that's absolutely not what I do. I came there to build a team and build a world-class team at that. And, I see myself more as, trying to find a product that's going to generate recurring revenue that's going to allow us to scale. And so I'm always looking for product opportunities. Now, we do a lot of local consulting, so we still spend a lot of time helping companies around town, but I never saw myself as that backup administrator, equipment purchasing type of guy. I'm more of an analyst, more of a project manager, more of a leader type than actually doing the traditional CIO work.
Right. I know you talked about some of those other jobs you had, and last month when we talked to Jim, one of the things he said was he had such a bad experience for the most part at Business Land, that when he went on and started his own company, ECS, he treated his employees differently and he managed things a lot differently. So as far as just managing your team at Synapse, what did you learn from those first couple of jobs?
I learned that you shouldn't try to control everything because you can't grow like that. You have to hire the best people possible and you have to trust them. And when I actually went looking for another job, that was very key to me, is the ownership. And I looked for owners just like Jim, and there were only a couple in this town. And that was huge to me because the way Jim manages is very similar to the way I manage as well. You hire great people and you provide service to them. You try to help them be as good as they can be.
Right.
And I'm very thankful to work for somebody like Jim who doesn't try to tell me how to do everything, although I know there's times when he could because he's been around and he's seen things. He offers advice as opposed to telling me I need to do something a particular way, and that's exactly how I try to manage as well.
Right. So I remember Jim last month talked about he met the founders of Synapse at a Chamber of Commerce function, and that's how he kind of brought them under ECS. How did he meet you and kind of recruit you to be CIO at Synapse?
We had a mutual friend, Heather Kasperick, who I worked with previously, was working at Synapse, and she had talked to me a little bit or mentioned to them who I was. And it's funny, prior to that, I went to lunch with Jim and the person who was previously in the position I'm in now, and I remember he was trying to recruit me as a lead engineer. And as I mentioned a minute ago, I wasn't a very good programmer. I was more of a leader. And the whole time I'm at that lunch, all I could think about is actually you have the job that I do. It's you've got the wrong person. I'm not a lead engineer. I'm not a CTO or
Right. So obviously, Synapse, through the consulting work and then some of the product work, you guys have done quite a few products and projects. Just for the 2 years that you've been there?
I'll be there 3 in May.
Okay. So in that time, except for SkyCoach, what was there a product or a project that you guys worked on that really stood out in your mind as just being something really innovative or something you were really excited to work on?
The one that really stands out is not going to sound very sexy, but we built a web service on top of a legacy system for Red Ball. And, they have a lot of investment into that product. And by putting this web service over it, we were able to enable modern mobile applications to communicate with it, web applications to communicate with it. And it was an extremely difficult product. And the reason why I like it, or I'm so proud of it, is because it really showcased the talent of the team that I work with. It's not easy, and there aren't a lot of people around town that would have taken on that project. Not only were we successful, but we did it in a manner that made the client very happy, and just one that really stands out to me that kind of showcased what we're about, is working hard, taking on the toughest problems, and making the customer happy.
Right. So I'm kind of going back to playing off of that, but also going back to my question about what you learned at your earlier jobs that you applied to Synapse. When I worked at Synapse several years ago, I was an intern there, and I remember two events that happened that stood out in my mind. One time, I was supposed to be fixing some kind of bug on a site, some medical association out in a different state, and I made a change to the site, and it was the wrong change. And I remember the whole site went down, and I went and talked to one of the lead engineers at the time, and I said, this whole site just went down. And he said, which site was it? And I told him and showed it to him. He was like, don't worry about it. We'll fix it later. And we talked about, what I had done wrong that had crashed the site. But that always stood out in my mind as it could have been like an opportunity, for somebody to yell or something like that. Right. But not even, the CEO or anything, but just the engineer used it as a learning opportunity.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, in software, mistakes happen almost every day. And, you know, when I talked early on, when I started managing employees, you know, some of the things I talked about is you're going to make mistakes. What's most important to me is that I'm not reminding you about the same mistakes. And so it's expected that problems are going to occur because you can't know everything. But, you know, the opposite of that is if every week I'm telling you the same thing, then there's a problem, and I probably would get a little more excited in that conversation. But,
Right.
but yeah, you have to have a laid back. Doesn't mean you don't care, but you have to be laid back because it's very, very difficult to, you know, think of everything that's going to happen, and it's just going to happen. It's how you handle it afterwards.
Right.
Is most important.
So I also remember that the same engineer, I asked him one time for the specific system that we were working on, why, you know, why are we using this system? Does it do A or B better? And I remember I didn't know, you know, how I'd never heard him get extremely technical with a description of anything, but what followed was an extremely technical discussion about why System A was better than System B, and this was built this specific way. So as CIO at Synapse, when you're recruiting a new employee, a new engineer, for example, what do you look for with that combination of the technical knowledge, but also them kind of having the right mindset to fit that culture that you guys have?
It all starts with passion. And you can tell someone who really cares about the stamp that they put on their product. And I talk to people about that all the time, is you can look at code or you can look at an application and you can almost always tell who did it. And so I start with passion, people who care about what their stamp looks like. Likewise, you know, I don't instruct my team on these are the technologies we're going to work with. What I tell them is what are our requirements. And I leave it to the team to tell me because they're the ones building every day. They're the ones that are spending their nights learning about new technologies and experimenting with which one's going to work better for a particular scenario. So I never go in and say this is what we're going to do. Now, if I see them choose something that seems kind of odd, I'm going to start asking questions about why'd you go this path? But I leave it to them to make those decisions. But it's because I trust the people that I hire and that I work with.
Right. So you spend, I don't know that you spend all your time, but you spend a lot of your time at Synapse now working on SkyCoach. So for anyone who doesn't know what SkyCoach is, could you give just a brief overview of that?
It's very simple. It's instant replay on the sidelines. If you guys watch football, you know that in the pros, sometimes there's a play where the referees don't know exactly whether the person caught the ball or not. So they'll go and they'll watch an instant replay. Well, teams have never been able to do that on the sidelines. It's always kind of been against the rules. And some people got in trouble for watching video on the sidelines or looking at pictures. But in 2013, the NFHS that regulates most high school, most state associations, they changed the rule allowing technology on the sideline. So all states allow that in high school now except for Texas and Massachusetts. And what we've built is the ability for someone to record from a distance and someone to watch that video on the sideline within seconds of the play occurring. And so it's a pretty simple app. It's all about video and reviewing what just took place and making adjustments.
So you coach high school football, right?
No, I coached middle school football.
So what inspired you to? Because I think I've heard that SkyCoach. It started one day. You said to one of the engineers, "Hey, can we do this?" And so what gave you the inspiration for SkyCoach?
Well, we were one of the only companies in the world that was experimenting with streaming from mobile devices because we've always been involved in streaming technologies with our news stations and our StreamNow.com product. So we knew that we had this capability, and we were all brainstorming about what are some ways that we could leverage this, products, ideas, industries that we could utilize it in. And at the same time, I had been coaching a sixth grade football team, and I was doing the typical, what most people do is they would upload video afterwards. They'd ask the players to go watch it from home. It's sixth grade. Not only are the kids not going to go watch it, but my assistant coaches weren't going to watch it either. So I was started thinking about how could I incorporate that video feedback into the practice or into the particular game. And then it was one of those eureka moments one morning. I was sitting there and I was familiar with what high schools were doing from video technologies. And I was just like, wow, this could apply to the high school level. And within a couple of hours, I drew out on a whiteboard the app that you see today that we're selling. And it just everything seemed to click. You know, we were brainstorming, couldn't really come up with something, but then that magic moment.
So when you first came up with the prototype or the concept for SkyCoach, who did you take it to test it out for you?
Well, first of all, my son and I, so we had been working with these technologies, and I really wasn't sure whether they would hold up in a game environment. So the first 2 or 3 games, me and my son, we'd go watch Bird play Parkway. We would practice in the stands just trying it. Do the technologies actually work? And we were using some of the products we'd already built. So using their variation of it just to see, you know, in an outdoor environment when you have thousands of people around you, can the cellular technology, you know, what's the interference like? So my son and I went and did it with a number of games. I had the developers make a few tweaks for things I'd like to see. And then towards the end of the 2013 season, I worked with Captain Shreve High School, Coach Larry. He was one of my coaches in high school, and said, hey, I'd like y'all to try something out. And he said, okay, yeah, we'll give it a try. And so we got good feedback on it, and, you know, immediately saw that this is a potential opportunity. So we went back, and beginning in January, the first thing we did was there's some large organizations that have the capabilities of doing exactly what we're doing. They just hadn't got to that point or thought about it yet. So the first thing I did was apply for a patent. And then we immediately started implementing the features I'd drawn out on the whiteboard. And during the summer of 2014, we started going to 7-on-7s, allowing teams to use it during their summer practices. And they seemed to really enjoy using it. Felt like we were, you know, don't want to quite say we had a product market fit, but we were close. There was great feedback. Everyone was excited about it. And so we started selling in August. Right before the football season, and it was very encouraging that, you know, we thought as soon as football season would start, people would quit buying and, you know, they'd wait till next year. But no, every week somebody would play a team that was using it, and they would call us up and say, hey, how do I get this?
Right.
And that's pretty much the history of it.
So I know you said there was a company that could or was doing something similar. I've heard you talk about Huddle. Is that right?
Yeah, they're different. So they solved the game exchange problem. And, you know, back in the day, these coaches used to, from Shreveport playing Baton Rouge, they would drive and meet each other in Alexandria and swap video. And so Huddle took that to the web, and they basically disrupted that industry at that time. There were a couple of players. They bought up all the players. And they solved the video exchange problem, and they've been providing features to coaches, you know, extending their repertoire for years now, and they definitely are a big player, but they have not been involved in the real-time information that we do with SkyCoach. And so after the game, we expect teams still work with their Huddle, but during the game, they use us.
Right.
Because we're about real time.
Right. So I know a lot of companies, when they design or build a new product, or they're actually just trying to validate that people want that, sometimes it's hard for them to quantify the exact audience they're looking for.
Right.
But with SkyCoach, you know, it's a lot easier. It's high school football coaches, and I know you talked about using stickers on some of the TVs,
yes.
and other coaches seeing the stickers. And I know you've also been to some high school football conferences where you've met different coaches. What have been your main avenues for getting new clients to use SkyCoach?
You know, early on, was all about word of mouth. And we knew we had to build something worth talking about. So you saw the proliferation in Louisiana very fast as people learned more about what we were doing. We use many different avenues for marketing. Social media, we're big on social media. We play Twitter games. We do a lot of different things to educate our audience about who we are, what we're about. Right now, every Thursday, I leave and go out of town, and I come back every Sunday night, and I'll be doing that all the way till April. And so I'm going. They have these clinics. They have these high school football clinics where there's some middle school coaches and a few college coaches as well. But they do these clinics around the country, and so some of the providers have up to 30,000 coaches across the country attending these things, 1,000 or 2,000 at each clinic, and so that's a great, unique opportunity in this particular industry that you get to catch everybody, or most of them, in one place, and so that definitely helps get the word out about who we are. But it's not the only path, because you can set up a booth and people can walk by you all day long and still not know who you are. And so you've got to find, all the different avenues to communicate to them.
Right. And I was going to ask you about that there, about what you said about the booth, because I know a couple of years ago I had this product I was working on. I went out and I think I had $600 or $700 saved up. I bought T-shirts. I bought stickers. I bought it was education related, so I had custom branded bookmarks. I had business cards. I had flyers. And I remember going to DigiFest South, and I had this booth, and people would come by. They'd ask what it was. I'd tell them about it. They would leave that booth. They had this bag of stuff they had picked up everywhere. And at the end of the day, of maybe the 100 people I talked to, probably about 3 or 4 ever remembered it. And I don't think I ever talked to any of those 3 or 4 again.
Right.
So, and it was $600 or $700 just wasted. So how do you guys prioritize, with that kind of promotional material you're using, what's worth actually spending money on?
That's a great question, and it's a continuous argument with the team. And one of the things that I've been reading lately, about exponential organizations, and one of the questions we ask ourselves is, is spending this money on this particular thing going to get us 1 or 2 clients, or is it going to get us 100 or 1,000 clients? And so we're always questioning, how do you exponentially grow as opposed to linear? When we go to the booths, early on, we had some big ideas about giving away this or giving away that and spending a lot of money on these things. But we scaled back some because we knew that wasn't the only medium that was going to make us successful. So we had to think about the other things, the Twitter games, whether we do season pass giveaways or TV giveaways. So it's tricky, and we're still learning. And you go to these booths and you try it. These clinics, they go on for months, and so I did 2 small ones to begin with, just as trials to see what's working and to learn as quickly as I can before we hit. So this coming weekend, we're going to be at 5 different places: Chicago, Kansas City, San Francisco, Atlanta, Arkansas, and so that we've learned a lot over too on what works best. And the funny thing is what seemed to work the best is we had this TV set up, and I just put up a little slideshow of showing teams that were using our product, and it would catch the eye of the coaches as they were walking by, but that gave me an opportunity to interrupt them and bring them over. And so you could have these big fancy banners, you can have all this swag and T-shirts and everything, but what's really going to catch their attention other than grab stuff and walk off, and just a simple slideshow of people using our products, and the visual of that actually worked. I implemented that on the second when it seemed to work best. So now we're incorporating concepts of our product, digital art within that slideshow, not just people using it, but things we want to communicate. Because a big thing of this is certain areas of the country still don't even know it's legal. So these coaches have always been told this is wrong, so they don't know how to interpret what they're looking at, because they think you're doing something else. They don't even know that you can do what we're saying you can do, so they don't interpret your product as being able to do what it does. And so it's continuous learning, but I did find that the visual of people using it was far more eye-catching than me handing them anything. In fact, I took drawstring backpacks and little phone holders, and I didn't even give any away because I didn't need to. And
So I've heard someone was telling me a few months ago that in East Texas, and I think this is pretty popular in other areas, but specifically East Texas, that on Friday nights, all the high school football games are going on, and everyone will go on Twitter and use like a special set of hashtags to keep track of all the scores for the games. And you can just go on Twitter, follow those hashtags, and you can get live updates. How do you guys kind of use that to engage with some of these coaches or teams?
We found that Twitter is the news aggregate for football coaches. They're able to separate that from their other social life. So they might keep Facebook for their personal friends, but they use Twitter to learn and communicate. And so we keyed in on that early on, and it was a great insight when we realized it. We're up to about 7,000 followers now, mostly high school coaches. And we do things like every Friday we play a game. So in recognition of Friday night football, for 6 weeks we're doing Friday Twitter games. And every Friday we play a game where we do the drawing on Monday, so we get to play the game all weekend. But we do things like, it's not just go retweet. What it is we're educating them about our product. For instance, this last Friday, our Twitter game was tell SkyCoach tell us what the 3 recording options are for SkyCoach. So they're repeating back to us what they learn off our website or previous tweets. And so we make them think and we make them participate. And of course, we give away a free season pass, but wanted to get beyond just doing a basic retweet or do this to win this. It's more about communicating who we are. The week before that, our motto at our work is, improving lives by leaving it all on the field. So we asked our teams to tweet, what does leaving it all on the field mean to you? So they'd put pictures of players carrying players, or, the fourth quarter where they're all completely exhausted. They're dropped out on the field. And so we make them think about what we're doing and who we are. And we also use that to educate about why we're different than our competitors. It definitely. I think it was along those same lines. I think it was Steve Blank that quoted, the team that learns the fastest wins. And so from day one, I knew the best way to learn is to study, how the user interacts with your application, study how the potential customers react to your sales pitch, study, the particular questions that they ask us when we're talking with them. And I made it a point for our entire team throughout the football season last year that every Friday night we were out there with them while they used our product, learning as fast as we possibly can and going back to the office and incorporating the feedback into the future of what that product is. Even into this clinic season, one of the things that, I question myself all the time, should I be at clinics every weekend, or should I pay somebody to do that so that I can stay back at the office and focus on operations or focus on designing the future of where we're going? But then I have to remind myself that the only way I know what the future is going to look like is by learning from those customers. And so every interaction at every clinic with every potential customer shapes what it is we do. And there was definitely a key moment towards the end of the football season, throughout the football season, we were constantly incorporating feedback and improving the product along the way. It's funny because I'm so embarrassed of that first version that we put out there because we're so far past that. But even the stuff we're working on now makes what we finished the season with look kind of silly. But there was a couple of key experiences that really shaped our priorities for the 2015 season, and we were able to listen to what they were saying and define a great plan for 2015.
Right. So a big thing for a lot of entrepreneurs is they're more likely to get burned out pretty quickly if they're not extremely excited about what they're working on. When they get up in the morning. So for SkyCoach, obviously you have an interest in football and you like the technical side to a certain degree and leading a team. But what about SkyCoach really just gets you the most excited about getting up every morning and working on it?
It really has nothing to do with the particular sport or the product. And, I kind of hinted at it. To me, it is really about improving lives. I've always derived joy from delivering value to a customer. And there's so much that we can do for these coaches to keep them focused on teaching and quit fighting technology. But that improving lives doesn't just apply to our customers. It applies to my team. It applies to the people around me. I truly want to build something that people are proud of being a part of, and that they feel like their lives are improved by being a part of it. That's what motivates me. It didn't really matter what the product was. We were always in search of a product. I'm just looking for an opportunity to delight someone and improve the lives of the people around me.
Right. So I want to backtrack just a little bit here and ask, when you first came up with SkyCoach and you said, okay, this is what we want to work on. Obviously, you talked to Jim, and at this point, Jim and the partners have kind of put some money behind it. So how did that discussion happen? Did he see it? He was like, this looks solid, or?
It's funny because early on, I don't think anyone really saw what the opportunity was. People would say, "Oh, the football app." It's kind of
right.
The football app. Even my team, the development team, didn't quite get it until I started bringing them out to work with football coaches, and the development team started seeing the value in it. It took quite a while for Jim and the rest of the ownership to really see what this opportunity was, but I also knew that it was my burden to educate them on what the opportunity is. And not everybody's going to see that right off the bat. And but I've been very, very thankful, and it's the reason why I went there in the first place, is because I knew that they were going to trust me and give me the opportunity to make something. And so while they didn't necessarily, especially Jim, didn't necessarily see much there in our early discussions, I've been very thankful that he didn't step in and say, "What are you talking about? Stupid football app. We're not doing that." So yeah.
So I've heard some people that are not, very technically inclined. They'll say, whenever, it could be when Facebook got popular, or Twitter, or any of these other products that are used primarily as apps now. They'll say, "Oh, that's just another app," or "Oh, why do people waste this money on an app? Why does everybody want to build their own app?" But at the same time, there are also people who are entrepreneurs or engineers that go out there and they really do build just an app, not really a product.
Right.
So if you have some of these coaches that maybe aren't used to using their smartphone all the time, what do you guys do to educate them about SkyCoach being an app, but also just being a piece of software you can use?
Yeah, a lot of coaches are not technology savvy. So from day one, from our design principles, it always had to be as simple as absolutely possible. And that's we liken it to Facebook. You go in and you click start and stop, or you go post, and you can view the playlist. And we always focus on what is the simplest thing that you can do and how to communicate to the users. This is a big part of the design and in our application. We've been very fortunate that coaches understand the value as soon as they're able to watch that play. So they learn very quickly once they realize they can see that play, because it's never been available to them like that. So you get the benefit that they understand the value, so they want to learn as quickly as possible. But also, we're doing everything we can to simplify how to get to that information. Right. So, as I was talking about earlier, I really don't want them to be fighting technology. I want them to be focused on teaching. So everything we do is, does this make it more difficult for the user? Does it make it better?
Right. And kind of to that point, I know that when I worked at Synapse, and also I've seen this with several other local software companies, they might build a system for a client, and there might be, the engineer or the team that sees the back end, there might be 90% of the back end that the customer never sees. There might be 50% of the functions they never use. But obviously with SkyCoach, especially running it inside an existing company, you have a limited amount of time and resources that you can devote. So how do you figure out, your top priorities for this is what we're going to build in the next 6 months or the next year?
I'm definitely not a fan of big upfront planning. So I'm not going into details of design for something that we might not get to in half a year. I don't even prioritize things beyond the next couple of months. The reason why is because I expect change. I constantly expect change, and that's because I'm continuously trying to learn. And I don't know all the answers, so why go spend all that time doing that? And it's funny because, I teach the class here at LSUS, and thinking about when I first started teaching that class as opposed to how I teach it now early on, I made them define everything they were going to build over a whole year. And now I teach that class by starting out and telling them how stupid that is. And that you don't know what's going to happen in a month. You don't know what's going to happen in 3 months. That doesn't mean I'm not a fan of prioritization. All it means is I'm not going to spend weeks trying to lay out something that we might not get to for months. I'm just going to focus on what's most important right now. And so we continuously argue about priorities, and I've got a great team, especially Brandon. He's always challenging me, from a technical aspect on priorities, and I'm always challenging from the feature side of it. And we have very constructive tension there that helps us stay focused and helps us make the right decisions.
I'll just say one of your students, for example, that comes out of say they come out of LSUS, they have their 4-year computer science degree, or maybe they have some kind of 2-year computer science information systems degree from DIPSI or another university, and they know the technical side. Maybe they don't have the real world experience, but they know the technical side, and they want to get into building some kind of product. Maybe they want to become an entrepreneur themselves. What would you recommend them to do? Is there something they should read, somebody they should talk to, or
spend as much time with the customer as possible? First, it'll help you understand what you're going to build, but also as you deliver pieces, iterations, you learn what worked and what didn't work. And, anytime you put a person between the engineer and the customer, you've added a layer of complexity or interpretation. And so I've always been a fan. The best model is for a developer working directly with the customer. Now, granted, when they first come out, there's a lot of lessons that haven't been learned, and someone can provide those lessons very quickly. Oh, you're going down the wrong path. So they should always seek experienced people in the space they're working in to bounce ideas off of. But the best thing they can do is, one, start building something. Start learning as much about it as possible and what your customer thinks about it.
Right.
And just the continuous feedback is big. Now, if I were just coming out of college, I'd probably do that on the side and try to work with a world-class team to learn as much off of them as fast as possible.
Right. So I've seen companies do a few different things locally, as far from the point that they have a new piece of information, maybe from a customer or from an observation they've made, and they decide they want to implement a new feature. I've seen a few companies do different things from that point to the point that they actually build that feature into their product. So, and you talked about kind of keeping the amount of layers down to build up that continuous feedback loop. So, what does that look like at SkyCoach? How do you keep that process from idea to new feature?
I try to keep it as simple as possible. If I have coaches at the office, I'll draw it up on a whiteboard and get their feedback right then. If I'm working with, a consulting gig, I might use some kind of mock-up software to just get it on paper and sit down and just use our fingers to pretend that we're clicking on stuff. Is this really what you wanted? When we look at a feature as well, we try to strip it down to the simplest version of it as possible, and not even necessarily make it pretty, and then get it out into the hands of somebody and a beta tester and say, what did you think about this? Is this bringing you the value you expected, or did we miss the ball on this one? And so it's get it out as quick as possible. Iterate on paper if you can, whiteboard, and don't be scared to throw stuff away. You mentioned, a lot of features that aren't being used. Just last week, we ditched like 4 features in our product. We're like, nobody does it. So get rid of it. It's just legacy that we don't want to have to deal with from a testing point, from, educating new developers joining the team. What is all this? Just ditch it. And so we like to prune the product as much as we'd like to add to the product. Right.
So do you read a lot of books, about like maybe entrepreneurship or anything related to the
not all the time. I do read more on the business side now, or the entrepreneurial side now. I go through phases, and I try to relate it to what I'm doing at this particular time. And I tell people all the time, the best time to learn is when you have to deliver something. And so like a year ago around the Christmas time, I was really studying up on Lean Startup, and I was doing the classes and trying to just use it as much as possible. And as I mentioned a minute ago, now I'm studying up about exponential organizations. If we hit this, if it really is a great product market fit, and we think it is, we've got early indicators that tell us it really is. How am I going to be able to grow this thing as fast as possible? And most of my reading, I do see lists sometimes and go, oh wow, I'd like to read that, and I might even buy the book, and I just don't read it because it doesn't apply to what I'm doing at this particular time. And so that's usually what I end up reading is what I'm studying or thinking about at that time.
Okay, so that was kind of leading up to this question. So of the, I guess, the most recent books you've read in the last 5 or 6 years, or maybe just period, what are the top 2 or 3 that you would recommend to someone who's maybe the person who just got their 4-year degree now and they want to get into doing something?
If somebody just got their degree, I'm struggling on the name of this book, but it is basically Keep It Simple, Stupid. And so it's an illustration on, I wish that book would pop into my mind. It's not happening right now. For somebody just coming out of school, especially if they're a programmer, I would read things like Clean Code. I would, I don't necessarily read a book front to back. What are you working on right now, and find a particular chapter that applies to you, and go read that.
Right.
And I'm also a big fan of multiple sources. So I hesitate just saying go read this book or go read that. I would say, what are you trying to do right now?
Right.
Are you trying to design better classes? Are you trying to learn how to communicate to a customer through mock-ups? Let's go read about that. Let's find multiple sources of it, because it's important to you right now, so you can absorb it fast. And you don't want to say one way is the best way. So go read a couple of them, see which one speaks to you.
Right. Do you have any additional advice, or maybe an anecdotal story you want to tell about SkyCoach or about your experience?
No, the only thing I can really think of all the things you were asking me today, and just thinking in terms of building great teams, being able to truly grow and truly deliver is trust the people you work with. So if one, hire people you trust. And when you work with them, trust them and let them do their job, and you focus on yours. And that's really what it's about. I tell my 480 class, because we do study software methodologies, project management principles, and I tell them about was it Alistair Cockburn? I can't remember which one. There was one guy, IBM paid him for a couple of years to go out and study all the methodologies out there and which one's the best. And he came back and he basically said, if you put people in a room together, if they exhibit good citizenship, you're going to get something. And so learn to work as a team. Learn to do whatever it takes. Don't say I'm just a programmer, or I'm just a project manager, or I'm just a designer. Do whatever it takes.
I do want to ask one question that I thought of off of that. And I think I told this story last month too. But there was a local company that builds a certain piece of kind of enterprise grade software, and they sell it to all different places all over Louisiana, and they have a team of about 15 or 20 engineers that work full time every day. And the team, they're really smart, intelligent people. They're great at what they do, but the way the company manages them is very much you're an engineer, you come in, you sit down 9 to 5, you do your code for the day, and you go home. Do you ever get people into Synapse that maybe came from another company like that, or they're new and they have that mindset, and you have to kind of get them out of that?
Yeah, the ones that didn't make that transition didn't make it with the company. And to me, to have a great team, you don't know what tomorrow brings. So if you're just a software developer and we're not in the software developer business tomorrow, how are you going to function? And so, yeah, you have to find the people that fit into that. I'm not saying there's not great companies that don't have that. So there are some great companies that people are just engineers. And that's right. What they do. They take the plans, they implement the plan, and they turn it over to QA. But I've never been a big fan of it, and so it's not what my team does. And I resist titles. And in fact, you brought up earlier the whole CIO thing. And I remember sitting at lunch with Jim, and he's like, what do you want your title to be? I said, coach. That was 3.5 years ago, which is funny because now we're doing this whole football app. But he's like, what do you want your title to be? I said, coach. And he's like, we're going to do CIO. That's why I said, I don't feel like a CIO. That's what my title is, but I don't feel like a CIO. And likewise, with my team, I don't, okay, you're just a project manager, or you're just a software developer one. What does that mean? We're all going to do mock-ups. We're all going to go interview customers. We're all going to try our best to code, implement, do whatever we can. We're all going to test. We're all going to, go educate, train, do clinics, whatever it is. We're all going to do it. So we're going to self-organize. Those that tend to be best at something, they're going to migrate towards that part, and that's just how it works.
Right. I've heard at Tom's, the shoe company, Blake McCoskey, the founder, he kind of had the same thought about titles, which was he didn't want somebody that was coming to visit the company or seeing the company because one person had a CEO title and everyone else was just an entry-level person, to treat this one person very well and just treat everyone poorly. And so what they do there is they have his title, for example, rather than CEO, it's Chief Shoe Giver. And they have, when they hired their first person who was managing all their shipping and sending, they gave him a title like Vice President of something, and they've made an effort to do that with all their employees, to make sure that when somebody calls over there and they get someone who's perfectly capable of handling their situation, but might just be an entry-level person, they're not going to be rude to him and say, hey, get me the CEO. But I've heard the story that Jim told where he used to go around and talk to the employees, and one of the employees said, "Hey, where's the CEO?" And he said, "Well, I am the CEO." "Oh, well, I thought you were just the nice guy that walked around and asked how everybody was doing."
Right. That's definitely. I remember that same story. It's pretty awesome. No, I did a poor job of educating them who our company is, who's paying the bills. But yeah.
So do you ever have, do you think one day you're going to have two stacks of business cards? You're going to have one stack that says CIO, and you're going to be handing out this other stack that says coach?
I would love that, but I have to be successful first.
Okay, so I think now we're going to take questions from the audience, which if you're listening to the recording, we just have about 1,000 people in the audience. The whole place is just packed. Everybody's moving out of the way so that our audience member can come ask a question.
Hey, Keith, I got a question. You talked about pruning the product and dropping features and everything. Have you ever come across where maybe one of your users really liked that feature, but everybody else wasn't using it, and you had to educate them on why they had to give it up?
Not on this particular product, because we're still so early on. Most of the stuff we pruned was just from lack of use. But I have on other products been a champion of cutting features and cutting capabilities, and it did annoy a few customers, and I hate to do that. But when I do it, it's with intentions of trying to make something better. And it could have been a performance issue where, hey, I know it was nice to have that, but now this whole thing works so much faster, and you're able to process so many other, whether you're doing data entry, so many forms faster. So you have to have a good reason for it. And in particular cases in the past, there was a lot about performance and why are you capturing that? Did you really need that? And it can go back and forth, but that's a great question because some users can get annoyed. I've never had a product where I had millions of users and 5% of them are revolting because I moved the button from the top to the side. So I haven't had that kind of experience yet, but we have made those decisions and people weren't happy with us in the past. But usually it's for the better of the community, and they accept that, especially if your product's valuable to them. They'll accept it.
Thank you very much.
Hi. That's loud. So my question is about specifically like the camera setup that you have for SkyCoach.
Yes.
Is it just like the big sort of shoulder cameras on the side, or are there GoPros attached to the players, or how do you guys?
Right. We have 3 ways of recording.
Uh-huh.
So today they can record from their iPhone or their iPad, which are very good cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Early on when we started doing that, we didn't have the digital zoom.
Mm-hmm.
So we attached cases to the phone that had lens attachments, and we provided those to our customers when they purchased our product. But now iOS supports digital zoom, our product supports digital zoom, so we don't sell those we don't give those lenses to the customers anymore because they can digital zoom, and if they need the optical, they can go purchase the lens themselves. Our third option for recording is we tie into their existing camera system. So all of these football teams, the majority of them usually have 3 angles they're recording from. They've got an end zone camera 30, 45 feet up in the air, and they've got a wide and a tight angle on the sideline that's up in the press box. Now, in order to use those, it's more complicated because now they have to bring a computer to the game, either a laptop or a desktop, and we've got an HDMI capture device where we take the HDMI output out of the camera into the device, it converts it to USB, so the computer acts just like our phone. So on our phone, we're sitting there, start, stop. On the computer, it's start, stop. And so that's our 3 ways of integrating with cameras, iPhone, iPad, and their existing camera. Whether it's a Sony or Panasonic, any of those.
What about, I mentioned GoPro. What about, do you see that as something that you're going to be doing in the future? I saw this really cool GoPro commercial one time where there was a camera actually attached to the player.
Right.
Maybe you've seen that before.
Yeah, I've seen what we're doing is helping coaches make decisions and teaching players. And so, I've seen the helmet cameras and stuff like that, but the view is not what you expect. A player could be looking out of the corner of their eye, but their head's not facing that way.
I see.
And plus, when you're running and you're jumping and you're cutting, the video's shaking like crazy. And honestly, I get kind of sick when I watch it. It's not something I can enjoy very much.
So you don't see that as like a future
I
thing?
really don't see that as a decision-making or educational video. What I see that is entertainment. For instance, if somebody in the audience wants to see the perspective of what that running back saw, or a quarterback just getting thrown to the ground, then you might want to watch that. But as a coach, they want to see, football is unique. You need to be at a distance to see 22 players spread out across a field. But how do I get that's at a distance down to the sideline as fast as possible? And that's the problem we solve.
Gotcha. And so, like you mentioned that you're more focused on the short term, kind of not trying to plan. I mean, what's the, like, surely you have like some kind of long term vision for, how big can you? But like, what's the dream here? Like,
there's multiple verticals and industries that I plan to disrupt, and it's amazing where that we can possibly go. I don't talk about it too much at this time, but because really I just need to make this product stick. So that's another reason why I don't get too far up into the ivory tower or the clouds, thinking about where I'm going, because I still haven't shown that this one's a money producer. And so I've got to make it stick now. And so I tell the team all the time, I'm like, man, I'll go sit there's a whole nother industry, and I've already laid out how we're going to go wipe that whole industry out. But then I remind myself, I haven't been successful here yet. So stop thinking about that. Get back to, how do I add another 100 customers, or how do I get another 1,000 customers over the next couple of months? And there are big dreams and big opportunities, but until I solve this one problem, sideline video, that I can't really focus too much on this.
I gotcha. Cool.
So how much is it for SkyCoach, for a season or a subscription or the whole package?
Right, we do a season pass. The first year is $10.95. Your recurring, your renewal is $500 a year. That is to use our iOS version and the internet. If you want to leverage your existing cameras, like I talked about earlier, we sell an optional existing camera kit. That kit is $295. Basically, with that kit, we have to provide you the HDMI capture device and cables to connect your phone to your computer, and we got to provide you the software to run on your computer as well. We also have a no internet kit. So, we initially started this thing. The simplest approach is, if you've got good LTE, everything works beautifully, because you go out there, you don't have anything to set up. You just turn the phone on and start using it, just like Facebook. But just like Facebook, if you don't have internet, nothing works. And so there are teams that play out in the country, or areas that don't have good Wi-Fi or good internet, but they also can't Wi-Fi their football fields either. So we are selling a no internet kit. And that one's $395. The existing camera and the no internet kit are one-time purchases, because we've got to provide you the materials. And the new no internet kit, basically, instead of going to our cloud infrastructure, your computer becomes the server. We put the software, provide you the software to run on your computer, and we provide you industrial-grade networking equipment to set up a little local network. Football is very unique, and you can have, in high school, 5,000 to 10,000 people in the stands. And, a lot of teams or other individuals that have come up with okay ideas, they think they can stick a router out there and everything's golden. And when you're at practice, it works perfectly. Router's sitting there, you're watching video, and everything's perfect. And then 5,000 people show up, and you can't go 20 feet. A great lesson, I've never learned much about Wi-Fi, and this is talking about doing whatever job's necessary. I spent a huge amount of time over the last 4 or 5 months becoming a network specialist and really focusing in on Wi-Fi. Turns out that radio frequencies, one of the most absorbing materials out there is metal. These metal bleachers are absorbing the frequency. Our bodies absorb the frequency. You stick 5,000 people, you've got a router up in the box and a TV down on the sideline. That router could have went all the way across the field and out to the next pasture. But as soon as you stick 5,000 people right there, that distance might be 20 feet. And so we've spent a lot of time in understanding network bridges, leveraging technologies that try to eliminate interference, learning a lot about line of sight, and using outdoor equipment. So, yeah, we have to charge for the networking kit that we provide because of cost.
Now, with some things like public schools not having a lot of funding to do these things, is it kind of hard that, are there coaches out there being like, man, this is awesome, I want it, but, you know, we need everything to be successful, and we can't afford that right now.
Right. Many teams have to make that decision of what's most valuable to them at that time. You know, for instance, you had mentioned another software product that pretty much every high school in the country uses today. They have to make decisions about, am I going to have multiple uniforms or one set of uniforms? They have to make decisions about, are we going to eat McDonald's or are we going to eat steak on Friday? They make those decisions all day long. The benefit with us is if you look at educating players, a lot of times they don't see the mistakes they made until Monday. So Friday night, you're talking to them. The game's so fast for them that their minds can't clearly articulate what just happened to them because they're not pros. They haven't done this their whole lives, and they haven't been paid to, you know, practice, repetition. So the game's moving fast, so they can't tell you exactly what's happening. Sometimes they don't know. Sometimes they don't want to tell you they got beat by the player, or they'll tell you incorrect information. You're relying on coaches up in the box to see everything, but they don't always remember what they see, or sometimes they get distracted by something else on the field. But being able to watch that play right after it, there's not many things that are more valuable than that.
And so you have like the different coaches, like the offensive line coach and the defensive, they're all walking around with iPads or iPhones.
Every team's different. So some teams, depends on how you intend to use it. The teams that have the big TV set up, what they do is when their offense comes off the field, they review the entire series with that entire offense. So you need a big TV so everybody can see what's going on. So they'll go over every single play, talk about mistakes that were made, and then talk about adjustments to make for the next series. They go back on the field, defense comes off, they go over that entire series with them. So the whole game long, it's taking a big crowd to the TV, going over it, and letting them go back out and taking the next crowd. There are some teams that maybe their players play both ways. They don't get to talk to everybody at once, or they don't really want to talk to the entire team. They want to talk to specific players like the quarterback or the linebacker. They tend to migrate to iPads. So they'll watch, they'll see something, okay, hey, I need to go talk to so-and-so. Let me go show Johnny exactly what was going on. Sometimes the coach up in the box has a conversation with the coach on the sideline because they're all wearing these headsets. That's another charge. Some of them have $30,000 headsets, and some of them have $5,000 headsets. But they'll be up in the box talking to the coach on the sideline about what just took place. Now, if they're both looking at an iPad and talking about the exact same thing, well, hey, look at play number 38, and they're communicating, going, look at him, he's dropping, he's cheating in. We need to hit the outside on this particular play. It's hard to say there's more valuable things than that other than player safety, like equipment or, you know, helmets and shoulder pads.
Thank you.
So the customer here, right? Do you kind of view yourselves as almost like an arms dealer, like where, you know, you sell it to these guys and, you know, their results are improving, the other team is going to be like, hey, look what they're using and stuff like that. We need to get that as well. And so then it becomes like a sort of like a build up with teams. Is that kind of the expansion model?
That's exactly how it happens today. I don't see myself like that. I really, you know, I love to teach, I love to coach. I see us in the education business because, like I was saying, why does a player have to wait till Monday to learn when he can learn right after it just happened? And that's like me talking about reading books. It means the most to me when I'm trying to do that particular job, so I'm going to absorb better. So teach them when it's occurring. But yes, it does happen that way. We have plenty of examples. For instance, John Curtis down in New Orleans beats Mandeville this year on Friday night. So you see the box score on Friday night, Monday morning, Mandeville calls. We got to have this. and so that played itself out over and over and over in many cities throughout the fall for us. A great one is, the Bird Booster Club president. He calls us up and says, "We need your software." And we said, "You already have our software." "Well, where's my TV?" And the coaches don't want a TV on the sideline. They're using iPads. And so, not only is are the teams going, "Hey, he's got an advantage. We got to do everything we can to get that same competitive advantage or keep up with them." So it is an arms race. But at the same time, you also get the factor of athletic directors and booster club presidents, and it's a pride thing. Hey, we got our big TV. Check it out. And so, it's interesting.
So, but I'm guessing then that there's not a whole lot of, you have to have that contact, like one team seeing the other team use it, because they're not going to be saying, "Oh, we look at this new thing that we're using," you know what I mean? So there's not going to be that rapid word of mouth spread that you would have.
You hit on that. Definitely. For instance, if you look at the testimonials on our website, I think there's one of them. The coach says it's in my best interest that none of the other teams have this. So they don't want to talk about it to their rivals, but they absolutely talk about it to their friends in other states and other parts of the state. And so word of mouth does get around with people who have kind of created coalitions, and hey, they've got similar interests and they help each other. So they're calling up their buddies. Hey, go check this out. But don't tell, don't tell so-and-so.
Don't tell Bird.
We've had teams that wanted to help us. They said, "But hey, I'll go talk to the school for you, but wait till after we play them." And so it's been interesting.
That's pretty cool.
Those are great questions. Thank y'all.
Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I like the question part because then I can really, that helps me. I like the flow. I feel. We had.
Yes. How many people are using SkyCoach right now?
In the last fall, we had hundreds. We're expecting from our early indications clinic seasons this year, we're expecting thousands this year. So let's hope it sticks and let's hope they all buy. We believe so much in our product. One of the things that we're able to do because we started out as software only is we can allow them to use it for free. And so we're really going to push that, allowing them to use it for free from April to August. None of our other competitors can do that. There's big risk, big potential reward, but you could also fail big time taking that approach. And so, we're putting our money where our mouth is right now, and we're spending a lot with anticipation. So it's scary, it's tough. We work very hard and taking big chances.
Okay, I want to thank our audience of about 1,000 people for being here, and also I want to thank LSUS for having us and agreeing to sponsor us and let us use the theater, and also want to thank Keith for coming and talking about SkyCoach and his experience.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.